Hi everyone, this video is going to talk about lab notebooks and how to prepare them and make effective use of them in the lab. Different instructors have different approaches to lab notebooks, so this is only one possible way of preparing and using lab notebooks, but this is one that we feel is pretty useful and hopefully you'll agree. So, depends on which lab notebook you've bought. Most of them come with a little bit of a heading section at the top, so experiment number, title, date, name of the person, name of the course, things like that. All of that should be filled out before you come to lab. The only thing that you could possibly have to fill out, and you'll fill it in lab here, is the name of your lab partner if you're working with a lab partner. So this is stuff that you'll have filled out on each of the pages before you come. As far as the things that are not set on the lab notebook page, the first thing that we like to put is the objective. So different people write the objective differently. Some people write a little paragraph what the lab's going to be doing or what the lab's about. Some people prefer to do bullet points. I'm a personal fan of the bullet points. Maybe something where I know that I'm going to go to lab and I'm going to measure the density of different metals. And then maybe I'm going to prepare a bunch of solutions. I'll use my objectives as a sort of checklist of things that I'm going to do before I leave the lab. Maybe I have to get more data from the TF. So here's get data from teaching fellow. Something like that. And here, as I'm going through it in the lab, I can just check off as I finish each individual thing that I'm going to do. So in this way, the objective is kind of like a little checklist. A way of seeing if I'm ready to leave the lab or if I'm not ready to leave the lab. One of the biggest things that you'll do before you come to lab is prepare your procedure. So in the lab manuals that you've been given a very detailed procedure of what you're going to do in the lab. We don't work from the lab manual specifically because we want to make sure that A, you know exactly what's going to be happening in the lab, and so we want to prepare our lab notebooks in advance, and B, and this is possibly more importantly, so that you guys have a place to make edits and observations and notes about what you're doing. So what I like to do is I like to divide the page roughly 2/3 and 1/3 or 3/4 and 1/4. It really depends on how much observations you're going to make. And so I like to make a little place for observations on the right hand side of the page. And so I start jotting down my procedure on the left and I leave room for observations. Let's say, and this happens a lot, let's say one of the steps is to measure out 0.1 grams of some sort of solute. What I would do under observations is I would put a space for the actual mass that I prepare in the lab. See, we're not going to actually measure 0.1 grams. We're going to do somewhere between 0.09 and maybe all the way up to 0.14. I don't know, depending on how important precision is over here. And so we leave ourselves a space so that when I'm in the lab, I can actually put in the precise mass of the solute that I weigh out. So that's one important thing for the observations. Another thing that I like to do is if there's something that I need to be careful about, or maybe some caution as far as the safety or waste disposal, I can make a big note of it over here, caution. Really bring my attention to it. And so here we have a way of drawing our eyes to something that is going to be really important when we're in the lab. We don't always have the time to really think about it in the lab. So here, by drawing our attention to it, we're saying, hey, wait a minute, make sure that we don't make a little bit of a mistake over there. Another thing that's really important is, let's say you know that you're going to be recording a lot of data. It's really useful to prepare a table in advance that'll house that data. Here I know that if I filled in each and every one of these cells on the table, I'm done. But as long as I have one missing, I'm still going to be doing more data collection. This is a nice way of making sure that I haven't missed anything really important while I'm in the lab. Also, if I'm really worried about what I did, I can make a note and say, hey, check this. This doesn't look right. Other things that we do when we're in the lab, we have our procedure. And it's important to make sure that we make notes. So maybe something turned red, or maybe some precipitate remained. We can use the observation section to really make sure that we remember what we did when we're ready to leave the lab. I think what's most important is that we make sure that our lab notebook pages are functional, have everything that we need, that they're well prepared in advance, that they make sure that they really bring our eye to what we're supposed to be doing in the lab, and that they're tuned for ourselves. We know whether we can digest small steps or big steps. So whether the lab manual uses a big paragraph or short bullets, we can really rephrase the procedure in words that'll be speaking to us and really guide us through what we're doing. I think the last thing to mention is that since these lab manuals are so inexpensive, don't worry about leaving space and writing legibly and writing large. Chances are you're going to use 2 lab notebooks for a year-long course, and that's okay. So make sure to take your time, prepare well in advance, and preparing well in advance is the best way of making sure that you'll be successful in the lab.